My name is Allison. I am 34 years old, and I am sitting in the ICU holding my 6-year-old daughter Emma's hand. She's been unconscious for 20 hours after a school bus crash. My phone buzzes with a text from my mom. Don't forget to bring 24 chocolate cupcakes to Lily's birthday tomorrow. I stare at the screen in disbelief as my daughter fights for her life. While I share this unbelievable family betrayal during the worst time of my life, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, and subscribe if you want to hear what happened next. Growing up in my family was always a lesson in disappointment. From as early as I can remember, my younger sister Stephanie was the golden child, and I was the afterthought. My parents, Richard and Linda, made it painfully clear through their actions that Stephanie's achievements were worthy of celebration while mine were expected. When I brought home straight, as my father would barely look up from his newspaper. When Stephanie brought home B's and C's, there were special dinners and excessive praise. Our home in suburban Connecticut was comfortable but emotionally barren for me. My bedroom was half the size of Stephanie's, despite me being 4 years older. When it came time for Christmas or birthdays, Stephanie's pile of gifts towered over mine. I told myself it didn't matter that material things weren't important, but the message was clear: Stephanie mattered more. By high school, I had accepted my role. I was the responsible one, the one who would drive Stephanie and her friends to the mall, while my parents smiled and handed me gas money as an afterthought. I was the one who worked part-time at the local grocery store to save for college, while my parents put away money for Stephanie's education. "You're so independent," my mother would say, as if my self-sufficiency was a personality trait, rather than a necessity born from their neglect. College was my escape. I chose a nursing program 3 states away, reveling in the distance. My roommate Jenna was the first person who seemed genuinely interested in me as a person. She would listen when I talked, remember my preferences, and actually celebrate my accomplishments. It was through her that I realized how starved for validation I had been my entire life. It was also in college that I met David. He was studying physical therapy, and we met in an anatomy class. Unlike my family, David saw me. Really saw me. He laughed at my dry humor, asked about my day, and actually listened to the answer and looked at me with a warmth I had never experienced from my own family. When he proposed after graduation, I felt like I had finally found my place in the world. We settled in a small town in Massachusetts, close enough to visit my family on holidays, but far enough that those visits could be brief. David understood my complicated relationship with them and never pushed me to share more than I was comfortable with. "Family should build you up, not tear you down," he would say. When we had Emma 6 years ago, I promised myself that she would never feel the way I had growing up. She would know she was loved, valued, and enough exactly as she was. David was the most incredible father patient and kind, always making time for tea parties and bedtime stories. Our little family was everything I had dreamed of as a lonely child. Meanwhile, Stephanie had married a successful businessman named Thomas, and they had a daughter, Lily, who was now turning 8. My parents doted on Lily, just as they had on Stephanie, lavishing her with expensive gifts and constant attention. I tried not to let it bother me when they would cancel plans to visit Emma, but would drive 6 hours to attend Lily's dance recitals. Over the years, I had developed strategies for managing my relationship with my parents and sister. I kept conversations brief and superficial. I attended family gatherings with a smile plastered on my face and an exit strategy always in place. I had accepted that my family would never provide the emotional support I needed and had built a life full of people who did. Still, there was always that little girl inside me who hoped that someday something would change. That my parents would suddenly see me, value me, love me the way they loved Stephanie. That hope, small as it was, kept me answering their calls, responding to their texts, showing up at family dinners, despite the knot of anxiety that would form in my stomach days before. I had learned to set boundaries to protect myself and my own little family from the toxicity that could seep in if I let my guard down. But nothing had prepared me for how those boundaries would be tested when Emma's accident happened, or how the true nature of my family's disregard would reveal itself in our darkest hour. The morning had started like any other Tuesday. Emma bounced into our bedroom at 6:30, already dressed in her favorite purple shirt and denim overalls, her blonde curls still messy from sleep. "Mommy, today is field trip day," she exclaimed, climbing onto our bed and jumping up and down in excitement. "I know, sweetheart," I said, rubbing sleep from my eyes and smiling at her enthusiasm. "Are you ready to see the aquarium?" "I want to see the sharks and the octopus and the seahorses and the jellies," she rattled off, counting on her small fingers. David groaned good-naturedly and pulled her down for a hug. "Save some animals for the other kids to see, Em." After breakfast, I packed Emma's lunch with special treats, drawing a little heart on her napkin like I always did. I helped her tie her shoes and double-checked that her permission slip was safely in her backpack. As we walked to the bus stop, she skipped ahead, turning to wave at me every few steps. "Bye, Mommy. Love you to Jupiter and back," she called as she boarded the yellow school bus, our special saying. "Love you to Jupiter and back," I replied, blowing her a kiss and watching as the bus pulled away. I had no way of knowing that would be the last normal moment we would share for a very long time. At work, my phone buzzed with a text from David. "Dinner plans tonight. Thinking we could grill if weather holds." I smiled, typing back. "Perfect. Emma will be tired from field trip. Early dinner and movie night." You read my mind. Love you. Such a simple exchange, but it filled me with warmth. These small moments of connection, of being in sync with someone who truly valued me, were still something I marveled at after years of marriage. I was midway through my shift at the hospital, checking a patient's vital signs when my phone rang. Seeing the school's number, my first thought was that Emma had forgotten her lunch or wasn't feeling well. Minor concerns. "Mrs. Anderson, this is Principal Watkins from Westbrook Elementary." His voice was formal, tight with strain. "There's been an accident involving the second-grade field trip bus." The blood drained from my face, and I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. "Emma, is she okay?" The bus was involved in a collision on Highway 16. Emergency services are on the scene, and the children are being transported to Memorial Hospital. Your daughter is among those with more serious injuries. I don't remember hanging up the phone. I don't remember telling my supervisor I had to leave. I don't remember the drive to the hospital, though I must have driven safely enough to arrive in one piece. What I do remember is the chaos of the emergency department. Parents huddled together, some crying, some stone-faced with shock, medical staff rushing between curtained areas, and the terrible silence when I gave Emma's name at the desk, the look of pity that crossed the receptionist's face. "She's already been taken up to trauma surgery, Mrs. Anderson. Take the elevator to the 4th floor and someone will help you there." The 4th floor waiting room was quieter, the crisis having a different quality here. A young doctor with tired eyes approached me. "Mrs. Anderson, I'm Dr. Reynolds, the neurosurgeon on call today." "My daughter," I managed to say, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "Emma, where is she?" "She's in surgery right now. The bus rolled several times in the accident, and Emma sustained a significant head trauma. She has a subdural hematoma bleeding between the brain and the skull that we're working to relieve. She also has a fractured clavicle and some internal bruising." The clinical terms should have been familiar to me as a nurse, but in that moment they were just terrifying words associated with my little girl. "Will she? Is she going to be okay?" Dr. Reynolds' face softened. "We're doing everything we can. The next 48 hours will be critical. Once she's out of surgery, she'll be in the pediatric ICU. She's going to be sedated and on a ventilator to help her breathe while her brain heals." I called David, who had been in a therapy session with a patient. He arrived at the hospital 30 minutes later, face ashen. We clung to each other in the waiting room, neither of us having words for the fear that gripped us. After 3 hours that felt like 3 years, Dr. Reynolds returned. "The surgery went as well as we could hope. We've relieved the pressure on her brain, and now we wait to see how she responds. You can see her in about 20 minutes once she's settled in the ICU." Seeing Emma for the first time after surgery was a moment that will haunt me forever. My vibrant, energetic daughter lay perfectly still, a breathing tube down her throat, her head partially shaved and bandaged monitors beeping steadily beside her. She looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, her skin pale against the white sheets. It was only then, sitting beside her bed and holding her limp hand, that I thought to call my parents. Despite our difficult relationship, they were Emma's grandparents. They should know. My mother answered on the third ring, sounding distracted. "Allison, what is it? I'm in the middle of planning Lily's birthday party." "Mom," I said, my voice breaking. "There's been an accident. Emma's school bus crashed. She's in the ICU. She had brain surgery. They don't know if—" I couldn't finish the sentence. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then, "Oh, that's terrible. I'm sure she'll be fine though. Kids are resilient." No questions about her condition. No offer to come to the hospital. No emotional response at all to the news that her granddaughter was fighting for her life. "I should go," I said numbly. "I just wanted you to know." "Well, keep us updated," she replied. "Oh, and don't forget that Lily's birthday party is tomorrow. Stephanie has been planning it for months." Before I could respond, my sister's voice came on the line. She must have been there with my mother. "Allison, Mom told me about Emma. That's awful. Is she going to be okay in time for Lily's party tomorrow?" "She's been looking forward to seeing her cousin." I closed my eyes, pressing my fingers to my temple where a headache was forming. "Stephanie, Emma is unconscious, on a ventilator. The doctors don't know when or if she'll wake up." "Oh," Stephanie said, sounding disappointed, but not particularly concerned. "Well, Lily will be so upset if both of you miss her party. It's princess-themed, and we've hired a real princess performer." "I have to go," I said, unable to continue the conversation. I'll keep you posted on Emma's condition." As I hung up the phone, David looked at me questioningly. I just shook my head, unable to articulate the coldness of my family's response. But in that moment, sitting beside my critically injured daughter, their reaction hurt less than it might have under normal circumstances. All that mattered was Emma. That first night in the ICU was the longest of my life. The nurses, many of whom were my colleagues, brought me blankets and coffee, their faces full of sympathy. David went home briefly to pack some essentials for both of us, returning with sandwiches I couldn't eat and a change of clothes I didn't care about. "You should try to sleep," he said gently around midnight, massaging my shoulders, where they had knotted with tension. "I can't leave her," I replied, watching Emma's chest rise and fall with the mechanical rhythm of the ventilator. "Just rest in the chair then. I'll wake you if anything changes." He kissed the top of my head, his own eyes, red-rimmed with exhaustion and fear. I must have dozed off eventually because I woke with a start when Dr. Reynolds entered the room early the next morning. "We need to take Emma for a follow-up CT scan to check the swelling," he explained. "And there's something else we need to discuss. The intracranial pressure is still higher than we'd like. We may need to perform a second procedure later today." David gripped my hand as the doctor explained the risks of another surgery versus the risks of waiting. My nurse's knowledge warred with my mother's terror as I tried to process the information and make the right decision for my daughter. As Emma was wheeled away for her scan, I checked my phone for the first time since the previous evening. There were messages from friends and colleagues offering support, which warmed my heart. And then there was a text from my mother sent at 7:30 that morning. "Don't forget to bring 24 cupcakes for Lily's party today. Chocolate is her favorite." I stared at the screen, unable to comprehend what I was reading. Surely this was some kind of mistake. My mother couldn't possibly expect me to be baking cupcakes and attending a birthday party while my daughter lay critically injured in the ICU. I showed the message to David, whose face darkened with anger. "You're not serious. She can't be serious." "I should respond," I said, my hands shaking slightly, as I typed, "Mom, Emma is in critical condition. She's having another scan right now and might need more surgery. I can't leave the hospital, let alone attend a party." The reply came almost instantly. "We've been planning this for months. Your sister will be so disappointed if you don't bring the cupcakes. You know how much Lily loves your baking." David took the phone from my hands, reading the message with disbelief. "Allison, you don't need to deal with this right now. I'll handle it." But before he could say anything else, my phone rang. It was my father. Dad, I answered, a small part of me hoping that he at least would offer some comfort. Allison, his gruff voice came through the speaker. Your mother tells me you're refusing to bring the cupcakes to Lily's party. Dad, Emma is in the ICU. She had brain surgery yesterday. She's not even breathing on her own. Lily's birthday party matters more than your drama right now. Emma will be fine. She's got doctors looking after her. Your niece only turns 8 once. I felt as if I'd been slapped. Drama. You think my daughter's life-threatening injuries are drama? You always were prone to exaggeration, he replied dismissively. Just bring the cupcakes, Allison. It's not too much to ask for you to think of someone besides yourself for once. David, hearing my father's voice through the speaker, gently took the phone from me. Richard, this is David. I need to be very clear about something. Emma is critically injured. The doctors aren't sure she's going to make it. Allison and I will not be leaving the hospital, and we certainly will not be baking cupcakes or attending a birthday party. If you can't offer support during the worst moment of our lives, then please don't call again. He ended the call before my father could respond. I sat in stunned silence, tears streaming down my face. Even knowing my parents as I did, I couldn't believe their callousness in this situation. David pulled me into his arms, and I sobbed against his chest. How can they be like this? How can they care so little about Emma, about me? I don't know, he whispered, stroking my hair. I've never understood how anyone could treat you the way they do. You deserve so much better. My phone buzzed again, with a series of texts from Stephanie. You're ruining Lily's special day. Mom and Dad are upset because of you. Again. Is it really so hard for you to think of someone else for once? Lily is crying because her favorite cousin won't be at her party. Each message was like another knife in my already wounded heart. David, seeing the texts coming in, gently took the phone from me and turned it off. No more of that, he said firmly. Your only job right now is to be here for Emma. The rest of the world can wait. A nurse came in to tell us that Emma was back from her scan, and Dr. Reynolds would be in shortly to discuss the results. As we waited, David and I had one of the most honest conversations of our marriage. I've tried so hard all these years, I said quietly. I kept hoping that someday they would change, that they would see me, really see me, but they never have. David took my hand. Some people are incapable of giving the love we need from them. It's not your fault, Allison. It never was. What kind of people can't even put aside their party plans when their granddaughter is fighting for her life? The kind of people who don't deserve a daughter like you, David, replied simply. You've spent your whole life trying to earn love that should have been freely given. Maybe it's time to accept that they can't give what they don't have. That conversation was interrupted when Dr. Reynolds returned with Emma's scan results, but it had planted a seed in my mind. A seed that would grow into a profound realization about my family and my place within it. The morning light filtered through the ICU blinds as Dr. Reynolds showed us Emma's latest scan. The swelling hasn't increased, which is good news, he explained, pointing to areas on the image. But it hasn't decreased as much as we'd hoped. We're going to try medication first, but if we don't see improvement in the next few hours, we'll need to go back in surgically. He handed me consent forms to sign in case the second surgery became necessary. My hand trembled as I signed my name, authorizing doctors to once again open my little girl's skull. What are her chances? David asked, his voice steady, even as his eyes betrayed his fear. Dr. Reynolds looked at us with compassion. Emma is young and was healthy before the accident. That works in her favor. But I won't mislead you, this is serious. The next 24 to 48 hours will tell us a lot. After he left, David and I sat in silence, holding Emma's small hand between ours. Her favorite stuffed animal, a worn rabbit named Hoppy, lay beside her on the pillow, looking as lost and out of place as Emma herself in this sterile environment. She was so excited about seeing the seahorses, I whispered. She had her special aquarium outfit all picked out. David smiled sadly. Remember how she made us watch that documentary about octopuses 3 times last weekend? She was convinced they're actually aliens. These small memories were life rafts in an ocean of fear, keeping us afloat when nothing else could. 2 hours later, the nurse came in to check Emma's vitals and adjust her medication. "The doctor is ordering the OR prepped," she told us gently. "The pressure readings aren't responding to the medication as we'd hoped." Time seemed to slow to a crawl as they prepared Emma for her second surgery in as many days. A different nurse came to take her, promising to update us regularly. As they wheeled her bed away, I pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, whispering, "Be strong, baby girl. Mommy and Daddy are right here waiting for you." In the surgical waiting room, David and I clung to each other, neither saying the terrifying thoughts that lurked in our minds. What if she didn't make it? What if she survived but wasn't the same Emma? How would we go on? 1 hour turned into 2, then 3. Each time the waiting room door opened, we looked up with hope and dread, but it was never news about our daughter. Other families received their updates, some collapsing in relief, others in grief. Finally, after 4 excruciating hours, Dr. Reynolds appeared still in his surgical scrubs. "The procedure went well," he said, and I felt my knees go weak with relief. "We were able to place a drain that should help reduce the pressure more effectively. She's being taken to recovery now, and then back to the ICU." "When will she wake up?" David asked, his voice hoarse. "We're keeping her sedated for now," Dr. Reynolds explained. "Her brain needs complete rest to heal. We'll monitor the intracranial pressure, and when it stabilizes at a safe level, we'll gradually reduce the sedation. But I must emphasize that this is a marathon, not a sprint. Each case is different, but she could be sedated for days, perhaps longer." As we processed this information, the waiting room door opened again, and a familiar figure walked in, my mother. She was dressed immaculately, as always, in pressed slacks and a cashmere sweater, her makeup perfect, her silver hair neatly styled. She looked wildly out of place among the disheveled, exhausted families in the surgical waiting area. "Allison," she said, her voice carrying across the quiet room. "There you are. Do you have any idea what you've done?" David stood protectively, stepping between us. "Linda, now is not the time." She ignored him, her eyes fixed on me with a cold anger I recognized all too well. "Lily's party is ruined. No cupcakes, and she's devastated that Emma isn't there." "Mom," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Emma just got out of her second brain surgery. She's fighting for her life." "Well, the doctors say she's going to be fine," my mother replied dismissively. "What doctors?" I asked, genuinely confused. "Who have you been talking to?" "I spoke to someone at the front desk," she said vaguely. "The point is, you could have at least sent David to the party with the cupcakes. But no, as usual, you make everything about yourself." Something inside me snapped. All the years of seeking approval, of making excuses for their behavior, of minimizing my own needs, it all culminated in this moment of perfect clarity. "My daughter is on life support," I said, my voice gaining strength with each word. "She has had 2 brain surgeries in 2 days. And all you care about is cupcakes for a birthday party." "Don't be so dramatic," my mother scoffed. "This is exactly what you always do, Allison. Create a crisis to get attention, to make everyone cater to your needs." "Create a crisis?" I repeated, incredulous. "You think I somehow caused a school bus to crash to get out of baking cupcakes?" "I think you're using this unfortunate situation as an excuse to hurt your sister and niece," she replied coldly. "You've always been jealous of Stephanie." David stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "That's enough, Linda. You need to leave. Now." "Don't tell me what to do," she snapped. "Allison, this needs to stop. Get your things, we'll go to the bakery on the way to Stephanie's. If we hurry, we can still salvage some of the party." I stared at my mother, seeing her truly for perhaps the first time in my life. This wasn't just callousness or self-absorption. This was something deeper, something fundamentally broken, in how she viewed me, viewed family, viewed love itself. "My daughter could die," I said, each word deliberate. "My 6-year-old little girl might never wake up, and you want me to leave her to go to a birthday party." Before my mother could respond, Dr. Reynolds appeared in the doorway, clearly having overheard the commotion. He approached with a professional calm that barely masked his concern. "Excuse me," he said to my mother, "but I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is a waiting area for families of surgical patients, and you're creating a disturbance. I am family, my mother protested. I'm her mother, and my granddaughter is the patient. Dr. Reynolds looked from my mother to me, then to David. Something in our expressions must have communicated the situation, because he nodded slightly. Nevertheless, he said firmly, I'm asking you to leave. The hospital has a strict policy about maintaining a calm environment for our patients' families. My mother looked as if she might argue further, but then seemed to think better of it. Fine, she said, gathering her purse. Allison, call me when you're done with this ridiculous display. As she stalked out, Dr. Reynolds turned to us. I apologize for the interruption. Emma is being settled back in her room now. You can see her in about 15 minutes. When he left, I collapsed into the nearest chair, shaking with adrenaline and emotion. I can't believe she actually came here to try to drag me to a party while Emma is like this. David knelt in front of me, taking my hands in his. Listen to me, Allison. What your mother did today, what your family is doing, it's not normal, it's not okay, and it's absolutely not your fault. In that sterile hospital waiting room, surrounded by other families facing their own medical crises, I finally began to accept a truth I had been avoiding for decades. My family was toxic, and no amount of effort or understanding on my part was going to change that. After my mother's departure, I felt hollowed out, as if the confrontation had drained what little emotional energy I had left. The nurse came to tell us we could return to Emma's room, and I moved on autopilot, my body going through the motions, while my mind struggled to process everything that had happened. Emma looked even smaller than before, her head, now wrapped in fresh bandages, the ventilator continuing its rhythmic work of keeping her alive. A new drain had been placed, a thin tube emerging from her skull to relieve the pressure inside. I sat beside her bed, gently stroking her arm, careful to avoid the IV lines and monitoring equipment. You should rest, David said, concerned by my pale face and distant expression. You haven't slept properly in almost 2 days. I can't leave her, I replied automatically. Not leave the hospital, he clarified. Just go to the family room down the hall. Lie down on the couch for an hour. I'll stay right here with Emma, and I promise I'll come get you if anything changes. One of Emma's regular nurses, Sarah, who was also my colleague from the medical floor, came in to check her vitals. Your husband's right, Allison, she said gently. You need to take care of yourself to be able to care for Emma. Doctor's orders. She gave me a small, sad smile. Eventually, I agreed to lie down in the family room, though I doubted I would sleep. As David predicted, however, exhaustion claimed me almost immediately, and I fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. I woke to David gently shaking my shoulder. For one blissful moment, I didn't remember where I was or why, and then the crushing reality came flooding back. Emma, I asked, instantly alert. She's stable, David assured me quickly. No change, but... He hesitated. Your sister and father are here. It had been 3 hours since I'd lain down, and I felt marginally more human, though the thought of facing more family drama made my stomach clench with anxiety. What do they want? They're insisting on seeing you. I tried to tell them now isn't the time, but they're making a scene in the hallway, and I'm worried they'll upset the other families. I steeled myself and followed David back to the ICU waiting area, where my father and sister stood arguing with a hospital security guard. Stephanie spotted me first. Finally, she said, as if I'd been deliberately hiding from them. Do you have any idea what you've done? My father turned, his face flushed with anger. Allison, this has gone on long enough. Your behavior is unacceptable. The security guard looked to me questioningly, and I nodded to indicate I would handle the situation. He stepped back but remained close by. What behavior exactly, I asked, surprised by how calm I felt. Perhaps I had simply run out of emotional capacity to feel hurt by their callousness. We had to buy supermarket cupcakes, Stephanie said, as if this explained everything. Lily was devastated. She cried for hours. The whole party was ruined. I'm sorry, Lily was disappointed. I said carefully, but Emma is critically ill. She's had 2 brain surgeries in 2 days. She's on a ventilator. The doctors aren't sure if she'll wake up, or what kind of damage she might have if she does. See, this is exactly what your mother said, my father cut in. Always making everything so dramatic, always needing to be the center of attention. Do you think I want this attention? I asked incredulously. Do you think I want my daughter fighting for her life? That I somehow engineered a bus crash to avoid a birthday party? Of course not, my father scoffed. But you're using it as an excuse to hurt your sister just like you always have. You've been jealous of Stephanie your entire life. Jealous, I repeated, a hollow laugh escaping me. Why would I be jealous of Stephanie because she had parents who loved her, who celebrated her accomplishments, who put her needs first? You're right, I was jealous of that. What child wouldn't be? Stephanie rolled her eyes dramatically. Here we go again with the poor Allison routine. Mom and Dad always bent over backward for you and it was never enough. I stared at my sister, wondering if we had grown up in the same household. Had she really not seen the disparity in how we were treated? Or had she been so comfortable in her role as the favorite that she had never questioned it? I'm not going to do this, I said, suddenly exhausted again. My daughter is upstairs fighting for her life. I don't have the energy to justify her medical emergency to you, or to defend myself against accusations that I've somehow orchestrated this to ruin a birthday party. You always do this, my father said, his voice rising. Run away when things get difficult. Refuse to take responsibility for your actions. You've never been a good daughter, and now you're not even being a good aunt to Lily. His words hit me like physical blows, and I took an involuntary step backward. David moved to my side, his face dark with anger. That's enough, he said, his normally gentle voice hard with fury. You don't speak to my wife that way. Not ever, but especially not while our daughter is critically ill. I want both of you to leave now before I forget myself completely. Don't threaten me, young man, my father blustered, but I could see the uncertainty in his eyes. David, at 6'2" and still fit from his college football days, was an imposing figure when angry. It's not a threat, David replied evenly. It's a promise. Leave now, or I'll have security remove you. The security guard, hearing this, stepped forward again. Sir, ma'am, I need to ask you to exit the building. This is a healing environment, and we have a zero-tolerance policy for disturbances. Realizing they had lost this battle, my father and sister turned to leave. But my father couldn't resist one final barb. Don't bother coming to Thanksgiving this year, Allison. You're not welcome in our home until you apologize to your sister and niece. As they walked away, I felt a strange sense of lightness, as if a weight I had carried my entire life had suddenly been lifted. The pain was still there, the hurt of being rejected by my own family, but alongside it was a new sensation: relief. Sarah, who had witnessed the entire confrontation from the nurse's station, approached me with concern. Are you okay? I can't believe they came here and said those things to you. I took a deep, steadying breath. I'm not okay. But for the first time I think that might be because of them, not because of me. Sarah nodded, understanding. Family is supposed to be the people who love you unconditionally, who support you when things are hard, not the ones who make things harder. I've spent my whole life trying to earn their love, I said quietly, making excuses for their behavior, blaming myself when they were cold or cruel. I kept thinking if I was just better, tried harder, they would love me the way they love Stephanie. Some people aren't capable of giving that kind of love, Sarah replied. That's their failure, not yours. Her words echoed what David had been telling me for years, but somehow in this moment, after the shocking callousness my family had displayed during the worst crisis of my life, I was finally ready to hear them, to believe them, to accept that the problem wasn't that I was unlovable, but that they were incapable of loving me as I deserved to be loved. As I returned to Emma's bedside, I noticed something I had missed before. Her hand moved slightly, her fingers twitching against the sheet. It was tiny, almost imperceptible, but it was the first independent movement she had made since the accident. David, look, I whispered, pointing. He saw it too, his eyes widening. I'll get the nurse. When Sarah came in to check Emma, she confirmed what we hardly dared hope. Her reflexes are improving, she said, shining a light into Emma's eyes and noting the pupillary response. It's small, but it's a positive sign. For the first time since the accident, I felt a glimmer of real hope. And strangely, it came at the same moment I had finally faced the truth about my family, as if Emma's first steps back to health coincided with my first steps toward emotional freedom. Dr. Reynolds, when he came to examine Emma an hour later, was cautiously optimistic. "The intracranial pressure readings are stabilizing," he told us. "If this trend continues, we may be able to start reducing her sedation in the next day or two." She moved her hand, I said. "Is that a good sign?" "It's a very good sign," he confirmed. "It suggests the neural pathways are intact. But I want to emphasize that we're still in the early stages of recovery. We need to continue to be patient and take things one step at a time." As David and I absorbed this news, I realized that Dr. Reynolds' advice applied not just to Emma's recovery, but to my own emotional healing as well. One step at a time. Patient progress. No quick fixes, but a steady journey toward wholeness. That night, as I sat beside Emma's bed watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest, I felt something shift inside me. A resolve forming, a clarity emerging from the chaos of the past days. My daughter was fighting to come back to us, showing incredible strength and resilience. The least I could do was fight for myself, for our little family, with the same determination. The days that followed blended together in a haze of hospital routines, medical updates, and small precious signs of Emma's gradual improvement. 5 days after her second surgery, her intracranial pressure readings had stabilized enough that Dr. Reynolds decided to begin weaning her off the sedation. "This is a positive step," he explained, "but I want to prepare you. The process is gradual, and there may be setbacks. Even once the sedation is completely withdrawn, it could take time for her to fully wake up." David and I nodded, by now accustomed to the careful balance of hope and realism that the medical team maintained. We had learned to celebrate small victories, a stronger grip reflex, a more consistent pupillary response, stable vital signs. On the 6th day, they removed Emma's breathing tube, replacing it with a nasal cannula to provide supplementary oxygen. Seeing her face fully for the first time since the accident without the ventilator apparatus brought fresh tears to my eyes. Despite the bandages and bruising, she looked more like our Emma again. By the 8th day, she was showing periods of what the neurologist called wakefulness, though she wasn't yet fully conscious or responsive. Her eyes would open, seeming to look around the room, but there was no recognition, no tracking of movement or response to our voices. "This is normal," the neurologist assured us. "The brain wakes up in stages. First, the eyes open, then comes awareness of surroundings, recognition, and finally interaction. Each stage can take time." During these long days of waiting, our support network had proven invaluable. My colleagues from the hospital brought food offered to sit with Emma, so David and I could shower or nap, and covered my shifts without complaint. David's co-workers at the physical therapy practice had organized a meal train for us and were handling his patient load. Friends had been collecting Emma's schoolwork and sending cards from her classmates. What was notably absent was any support from my family. After my father's angry departure from the hospital, I had received no calls, no texts, no inquiries about Emma's condition from any of them. It was as if we had ceased to exist in their world the moment we refused to prioritize Lily's birthday party. A week and a half after the accident, I was sitting beside Emma's bed reading aloud from her favorite book about a princess who rescues dragons, when I noticed her eyes tracking the colorful illustrations. My heart leapt, and I called for the nurse. "Emma, sweetheart, can you hear me?" I asked, squeezing her hand gently. And then, the miracle we had been praying for. She squeezed back. It was weak, barely perceptible, but definitely intentional. By that afternoon, she was responding consistently to simple commands. "Squeeze my hand if you can hear me. Blink if something hurts." Her progress accelerated from there, her young brain showing remarkable resilience. 2 weeks after the accident, she spoke her first word, "Mommy." It was raspy, barely audible, but the sweetest sound I had ever heard. David and I both dissolved into tears, clinging to each other over our daughter's bed, as the significance of the moment washed over us. As Emma continued to improve, the neuropsychologist began assessing her for cognitive and memory deficits. To our immense relief, while she had some gaps in her memory of the accident and the days leading up to it, her overall cognitive functions appeared largely intact. She would need physical therapy for weakness on her left side, and might have some ongoing issues with headaches and fatigue, but the prognosis was remarkably good. Your daughter is what we sometimes call a miracle case, Dr. Reynolds told us during rounds 3 weeks after the accident. Given the severity of her initial injury, her recovery has exceeded our most optimistic expectations. It was around this time that my phone rang with a call from my mother. I stared at the screen, feeling a complex mix of emotions, surprise anxiety, a reflexive hope that maybe they had finally realized the gravity of the situation, and an equally strong skepticism based on decades of disappointment. After a moment's hesitation, I answered, "Hello." "Allison," my mother said, her voice brisk and matter-of-fact, as if our last interaction hadn't been her trying to drag me away from my critically injured daughter's bedside. "We're having the family dinner this Sunday as usual. Your father and I expect you to be there. It's time to put all this unpleasantness behind us." I was speechless for a moment, struggling to process the audacity of her words. "Unpleasantness," I finally managed to say. "Mom, Emma nearly died. She's been in the hospital for 3 weeks. "Yes, and I'm sure that's been very difficult for you," she said, sounding impatient. "But Stephanie tells me she's doing better now, so there's no reason for you to continue holding a grudge." "A grudge," I repeated, incredulous. "How do you know Emma's doing better?" "You haven't once called to ask about her condition." "Well, I'm calling now, aren't I?" she replied. As if this one call 3 weeks after the fact, and clearly motivated by her desire for me to attend Sunday dinner, rather than genuine concern for Emma, somehow made up for everything. "Mom," I said carefully, "Emma is still in the hospital. She's only just started talking again. She can't walk yet. We're a long way from normal." "But she's going to be fine," my mother dismissed. "So I don't see why you can't put aside your feelings and think about the family for once. Lily has been asking about you, and frankly, your absence is causing problems." In that moment, with clarity born from 3 weeks of perspective, I finally accepted what David and others had been trying to tell me for years. This wasn't a normal family dynamic. This wasn't love. This was a toxic pattern that had shaped my entire life, and if I didn't break it now, it would eventually extend to Emma as well. "I'm sorry, Mom," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I won't be at dinner on Sunday. Emma needs me here, and that's where I'll be." "Allison, don't be ridiculous. Your father is still very upset about how you spoke to him at the hospital. He expects an apology." "I'm not going to apologize for prioritizing my critically injured daughter over a birthday party," I replied, feeling a newfound strength in stating this boundary. "Well, then you've made your choice," she said coldly. "Don't expect us to welcome you back with open arms when you finally come to your senses." After she hung up, I sat for a long time, phone in hand, processing what had just happened. For the first time, I had clearly stated a boundary with my mother, and her response had been to threaten me with the withdrawal of love and acceptance, the very thing she had conditioned me to seek my entire life. But instead of the panic and guilt such a threat would normally have induced, I felt a strange sense of calm, even relief. The worst had happened. She had played her ultimate card, and I was still standing, still breathing. Still loved by my husband, my friends, my colleagues, and most importantly by my daughter. During Emma's hospital stay, I had been seeing the hospital's staff therapist, Dr. Harper, to help me cope with the trauma of Emma's accident. In our next session, I shared the conversation with my mother and my surprising reaction to it. "What you're describing is a breakthrough," Dr. Harper told me. "You've recognized the manipulation for what it is, and you've found the strength to resist it. That's a significant step in healing from this type of family dynamic." "I keep thinking about Emma," I admitted, "about what it would mean for her to grow up watching me be treated the way my parents treat me. What that would teach her about her own worth, about what she should accept from others." "That's a powerful insight," Dr. Harper nodded. "We often find the courage to do for our children what we struggle to do for ourselves." "I think I need to cut contact with them," I said the words. Both terrifying and liberating, at least until they can respect my boundaries and treat me with basic decency. "That's a difficult decision," she acknowledged, "but sometimes necessary for emotional health." "What does David think?" "He's been suggesting it for years," I said with a small smile. but he's always respected that it was my decision to make when I was ready. That evening, after discussing it thoroughly with David, I wrote a long email to my parents and Stephanie. I explained that I needed space and time to focus on Emma's recovery and my own emotional health. I set clear boundaries about what kind of contact would be acceptable in the future, if any respectful communication, acknowledgement of past hurtful behavior, and a commitment to change. I didn't expect any of these conditions to be met, but stating them clearly was an important step for me. As I pressed send on the email, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in my life, I was prioritizing my own well-being and that of my immediate family over the impossible task of earning love from people who seemed incapable of giving it freely. The next morning, Emma spoke in a complete sentence for the first time since the accident. Looking up at me with those big blue eyes still cloudy with medication, but increasingly alert, she asked, "Can we go home soon, Mommy?" I kissed her forehead, gently careful of her healing wounds. "Soon, baby girl. We're getting there one step at a time." And for once, I wasn't just saying comforting words to my daughter. I truly believed them. We were healing, both of us in different ways, but together. And we would make it home to a life that might look different than before, but would be built on a stronger, healthier foundation. 6 months after the accident, our living room had been transformed into a makeshift physical therapy space. Colorful balance cushions, therapy bands, and exercise balls competed for floor space with Emma's toys and books. The coffee table had been pushed against the wall to create an open area where Emma practiced her walking exercises 3 times a day. The physical changes to our home mirrored the emotional changes in our lives. What had once seemed impossible, the road to Emma's recovery, had gradually become our new normal. Each small victory, from her first hesitant steps with a walker to the day she climbed the stairs unassisted, had been celebrated with the intensity of appreciation that only comes after nearly losing everything. Emma's cognitive abilities had returned almost completely, though she still struggled occasionally with word-finding and concentration. Her physical recovery had been slower, but steady, her left side growing stronger with each passing week. The neurologist had recently reduced her follow-up visits to once a month, another milestone on our journey back to normal life. Throughout these months of recovery, I had maintained my boundary with my family of origin. There had been a few attempts at contact, all following the same pattern: demands for me to get over it and return to the family fold on their terms, with no acknowledgement of their behavior during Emma's crisis, much less any apology. Each time I had calmly restated my boundaries and the conditions under which I would consider rebuilding a relationship. And each time my clarity and resolve had strengthened rather than weakened. The crushing guilt and obligation I had felt my entire life had gradually faded, replaced by a growing sense of peace and self-worth. My newfound boundaries had created space for genuine relationships to flourish. David and I had grown even closer through the ordeal, our marriage strengthened by the crisis we had weathered together. My friendships had deepened, particularly with colleagues like Sarah, who had witnessed both Emma's medical journey and my emotional one. Most importantly, I was modeling for Emma what healthy relationships looked like, teaching her through example that love should never require you to diminish yourself or accept mistreatment. On a crisp October morning, 6 months to the day since the accident, I was sorting through the mail when I found a letter with my mother's distinctive handwriting on the envelope. My heart beat a little faster as I opened it, part of me still hoping, despite everything that it might contain, some recognition, some genuine reaching out. Allison, the letter began without greeting. "This game you're playing has gone on long enough. Your father and I have been more than patient with your dramatics, but it's time for you to stop punishing the family and resume your responsibilities. Thanksgiving is next month and we expect you, David, and Emma to be present. Lily misses her cousin and your continued absence is causing problems for everyone. It's time for you to stop being selfish and think about others for a change." There was no inquiry about Emma's health, no acknowledgement of the trauma we had all been through, no recognition of my stated boundaries. Just the same demands, the same manipulation, the same emotional blackmail that had shaped our relationship my entire life. In the past, such a letter would have sent me spiraling into guilt and self-doubt. I would have agonized over my response, probably ultimately giving in to maintain peace. but as I read it now, I felt only a sad clarity. This was who they were. This was who they had always been. And no amount of hoping or trying on my part was going to change that fundamental reality. I folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope, deciding not to respond at all. There was nothing more to say that I hadn't already said. My boundaries were clear, and their response had confirmed once again that they had no intention of respecting them. Later that afternoon, as I helped Emma with her exercises, she asked out of the blue, "Are we going to see Grandma and Grandpa soon?" I sat down beside her on the exercise mat, choosing my words carefully. "No, sweetie. Not right now." "Because they weren't nice when I was in the hospital?" she asked, surprising me with her perception. I hesitated, wanting to be honest without burdening her with adult complexities. "Yes, partly that. Sometimes even when we love people, we need to take a break from them if they don't treat us with kindness and respect." She nodded, processing this with the remarkable adaptability of children. Like when Zoe at school was being mean, and I had to play with other friends for a while. Something like that, I agreed, touched by her simple but accurate analogy. Family is important, but what makes someone truly family isn't just being related. It's how they treat you, how they love you, whether they're there for you when things are hard. "Like Miss Sarah and your other friends from the hospital who brought us dinner?" Emma asked. "Exactly like that," I said, giving her a gentle hug. "Those people are our real family, even if we're not related by blood." That evening, as David and I sat on the porch swing after Emma had gone to bed, I shared the letter and my decision not to respond. "I think that's wise," he said, taking my hand. "You've made your position clear. The ball is in their court, and so far they've chosen not to pick it up." "I used to think there was something wrong with me," I admitted. "That I wasn't lovable enough, or that I was too needy, too sensitive. That if I could just be better somehow, they would love me the way they loved Stephanie." "And now?" he asked gently. "Now I know that wasn't true. Their inability to love me unconditionally was never about me. It was about them, their limitations, their issues. And no matter how perfect I tried to be, it wouldn't have changed anything." "That's a powerful realization," David said, squeezing my hand. "The strangest part is that once I accepted that, once I stopped trying so hard to earn their love, I finally felt free. Like I'd been carrying this enormous weight my whole life without even realizing it, and suddenly it was gone." We sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The future stretched before us, uncertain as always, but full of possibility. Emma would continue to heal and grow. Our little family would move forward, shaped by what we had endured, but not defined by it. I had learned perhaps the most difficult lesson of my life through this ordeal, that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to let go of the people who cannot or will not love you as you deserve to be loved, even, or perhaps especially when those people are family. True family, I had discovered, was not defined by blood or obligation or shared history. It was defined by love, by presence in hard times, by mutual respect and care. By that definition, I was rich in family, surrounded by people who had shown up for us when it mattered most. As we went inside for the night, I paused to look at Emma's latest artwork, proudly displayed on the refrigerator, a colorful drawing of our family, including not just David and me, but also Sarah from the hospital, my friend Jenna, who had flown in twice to help during Emma's recovery, and even Dr. Reynolds. My family, she had written across the top in careful first-grade handwriting. "Out of the mouth of babes," I thought with a smile. Emma, in her simple wisdom, had already figured out what had taken me 34 years to learn. Family is who loves you, who shows up, who stays when things are hard. And sometimes building the family you need means letting go of the family you were born into. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who couldn't give you the support you needed? Leave a comment sharing your experience and how you handled it. Don't forget to like this video if Emma's recovery touched your heart, to subscribe for more real-life stories that might help you through your own family struggles, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to protect yourself from toxic relationships, even with family. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, choosing your own well-being isn't selfish, it's necessary. Sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do.